US Open is the best Grand Slam ever. Fan Week is also the best thing ever. Welcome, tennis fans, to the 53rd episode of Tennis Traverse Exploring the Game, the podcast that delves into the heart of the tennis world. I'm your host, Ivy Zhang, and in today's episode, I will be analyzing the draw of US Open 2024 for the men's singles and the women's singles tournament. Before we begin, please follow all of my social medias, that is Instagram and Twitter, using @TennisTraverse, that is @TennisTraverse. If you're listening on YouTube, comment, like, and subscribe. If you're listening on other streaming platforms, please rate my show. And let's get right into today's episode. So before we dive in, I kind of want to give you guys an update about my week at the US Open. So I'm recording this Saturday night, and from Monday to basically Sunday, which is tomorrow, I spent the whole day there at US Open, for the whole week, and it was incredible. I worked in the American Express fan experience room, and I got to play tennis with adults and kids, and it was just so much fun. And after that, I get to just go around the grounds and watch matches, and I also got my credentials, which was really cool to me. I will be coming out with an episode with my coworker Aaron Baxt, who was on my podcast before, on how our experiences were working there, but it was incredible, and I kind of want to just invite him on and talk about our experience and how much fun it is, and maybe dive a little bit into his love for tennis and how he picked up his tennis racket and hit his first tennis balls. But if you guys are interested in that, please stay tuned, because it will be coming up. Not this episode though. This episode will be just about the draw analysis, which I do for every Grand Slam / big tournament such as the Olympics. And before I actually dive into the analysis, I do want to say that I have a newsletter that is posted every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and it is just a preview into the episode on Monday. So it's just really short. It's like a 2-minute read, and I only send one letter to your inbox every week, so I'm not spamming your inbox. And with that, you guys get a sneak peek into what I talk about on my Monday episodes, and you guys also get PDF analysis of my draw predictions, because obviously we only have 20 minutes together, and I really want to talk about a lot of stuff, but I can't cover everything. But the draw analysis, I spent an hour and a half doing it, and it contains both the men's draw and the women's draw. There's a key, so you guys can refer to it, and it'll be really easy if you guys have the analysis to follow on with what I'm talking about, because it just makes it much easier. And there's just so much stuff on the PDF, so it's going to be linked in that email, so if you click on it, you will see everything. So I won't be able to talk about it all, but I'm going to try my best to cover it. But as I said before, if you guys want the full PDF predictions, please feel free to subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. It's in the show notes. If you guys click on the link tree or just click on the Substack link, you guys will be able to get the subscription, and it's completely free. So yeah, okay. I want to start off with the women's draw first, and then we'll talk about the men's draw. So the word I want to describe the women's draw as is open. So I have a tradition of writing down the top 3 contenders, but when I really thought about it, I felt that it should be 4 contenders instead of 3, because I honestly couldn't narrow it down to 3. As I said, the key word on the women's side is open. Everyone have a chance of winning the women's tournament. So my top 4 contenders in no particular order are Jessica Pegula, Aryna Sabalenka, Coco Gauff, and Iga Swiatek. So Jessica Pegula, she's coming in really hot. She won Cincinnati, which is the Masters, before the US Open, and there has been a saying going on that if you win Cincinnati, you get a great chance of winning the US Open. Aryna Sabalenka, she played in the finals against Coco Gauff. lost in 3 sets, but it was an incredible match. She's also having an incredible year, winning Australian Open. I think this could be a chance of her getting another Grand Slam title. And then Coco Gauff, the defending champion at US Open. So I think she's also performing really well this year. I think it's another opportunity for her to maybe defend her title, even though it's really hard, but I think she might have a chance of doing it. And then Iga Swiatek, who's the number 1 seed. I mean, it's Iga, so everything can happen with her, even though maybe she didn't perform as well as she would have liked to at the Olympics. I think, as she said in press conferences, she's a little bit exhausted, but I feel like she's taking some rest, and I feel like the US Open is going to be a great opportunity for her to, I guess, end the season out with a bang. And now I want to talk about how I sort of set up the analysis of the draw. So I divided it into 4 quarters. So for the first quarter, we have Iga Swiatek, the number 1 seed, leading, and the number 6 seed, Jessica Pegula, leading. So I want to talk about some round 1 matches. So we have a match between Eva Lise and Mary Bolskova. So this is going to be an incredible match because I really appreciate the way Eva Lise played. She played from qualifying, and I think US Open have a lot of stories of these just qualifying players, such as Emma Raducanu winning 10 matches in a row to get to the championships. Obviously, I don't have her winning the entire thing, but I have her going really far and beating seeded players such as the number 16th seed Samsonova, and maybe even I think she has a chance against Mira Andreeva, who's super young, super talented, but I think these two, it will be a great match, and this is a potential matchup in round 3. But for the first round, I think Eva Lise in quarter 1 is going to be an incredible match, and that is Eva Lise versus Mary Bolskova. The other match I want to talk about in quarter 1 is between Emma Raducanu and Sofia Kenin. So I would say that both of these players had their chances of shining, or they already shined. And I'm not saying that they're not going to sort of come back, but Sofia Kenin is the 2020 Australian Open champion, and Emma Raducanu is the 2021 US Open champion. So I guess what I'm trying to say is both of them had won Grand Slams before, but over the past few years, they have both been struggling a lot with injuries and not performing as well. So this is a great, an interesting matchup because both of these players have been injured and they're coming back. So they're I wouldn't say at the start of their comeback journey, but they've been coming back for a while, but they're still trying to prove to everyone that they're as good as they were. So I think it'll be really interesting to see 2 Grand Slam champions basically play it out in the first round, which we normally don't get. So I think personally I have Raducanu going forward because I think just from looking at her this past season, I feel like Raducanu have a better record compared to Sofia Kenin. I feel like, for example, Emma Raducanu at the City Open, she made it to the quarterfinal where she lost to Badosa in 3 rounds, and she also made it to the 3 sets, and she also made it to the round of 16th at Wimbledon where she lost to Lulu Sun. So there's just a lot of, steep runs for her, so I think she has a greater chance of winning this matchup. But I will say that don't underestimate Sofia Kenin as well. Even though Kenin hasn't been performing as well, I mean, she has been playing some singles tournament, but she's been losing in round 1. But I mean, we never know with Grand Slam, especially if it's the last Grand Slams of the season. Everyone is exhausted. We really don't know what's going to happen. I think that's part of the reason why US Open have a lot of unexpected, I will say, winners, because everyone's exhausted, and especially the top players, because they've been playing almost every single week or every other week. It's completely exhausting, and this is their last major tournament. So we really don't know who's going to peak and who's not going to peak. But I guess that's it for quarter 1, and now we'll talk about quarter 2, which is one of my favorite quarters. There's a lot of people that I think you guys should look out for. I have highlighted 4 or 5 on my PDF, but if you guys are following along, you guys can see all of it, but obviously I don't have time to cover all of it, but I'll try my best. So quarter 2 is led by the number 4th seed, Aryna Sabalenka, and the number 5th seed, Jasmine Paolini. So I would say that this quarter is just like really interesting. There's so much stuff going on, and I feel like there will be upsets, but I do want to talk about just some players, as I said, you guys should look out for. So the first one being Anna Kalinskaya. So Kalinskaya had, I think, an amazing start to her season. She's playing really well. She's going really deep at Australian Open, and she's just doing really well, but I feel like we haven't heard that much of her. For example, she lost in the round of 32 in Cincinnati, and she also at Wimbledon chose to retire in the middle of the match against Rybakina after losing 3-6, 0-3 in the second, and she just, I guess, hasn't been performing as well as she was at the start of the season. I mean, if you really look at her start of the season, she went to the finals in Dubai and lost against Paolini, and in Indian Wells, even though she only made it to the second round, she played against Paolini in 3 sets and also lost, and she also made it to the quarterfinals of Australia. So I feel like she's been performing really well, and from, I guess, just looking at her practices for the past week, I mean, practice don't really tell you, but for me, I felt that she was performing really well, and I felt that she was energized and ready for this tournament. And another player I think you guys should look out for is Leila Ferdinand, who was the runner-up of the 2021 US Open. So I think this year is maybe, in my opinion, one of her best years yet. In Cincinnati, she made it to the quarterfinals. In Canada, she made it to the round of 32. In Wimbledon, she didn't do that well. She made it to the second round, but still, she's been playing. She's picking up her racket, which is something she's been struggling with injury, where she just hasn't been performing that well. So I think she's consistently performing well, which is a good thing. So I think these are some players you guys should look out for, as well as Naomi Osaka, who's going to play against Helena Ostapenko in round 1. So this, I predicted it will be an upset, because I think so they had one head-to-head in 2016 on clay. So really, we can just ignore that because it's in 2016 and it's on clay, which is a completely different surface. But I think Osaka have a greater chance of winning because Ostapenko is just in horrible form. I'm not saying that Osaka is in like a much greater form, but I think Ostapenko, even though she's the number 10th seed, let's just look at her record. She lost in the round of 32, which is the first round at Cincinnati. She's losing in the round of 16 to Taylor Townsend in Canada, and in Wimbledon she also made it to the quarterfinals, which isn't that bad, to be completely honest, but I feel like she just hasn't been performing well. Sort of same with Kalinskaya, in a way that I think their start of the season is better than their end of the season, which is totally like fine. I think that's just what happens, but I think Naomi really have a chance of winning, even though it is going to be, I think, a tied match, an incredible match, but I'll be there, and I'm really excited to see how the match is going to play out. And so for my quarter 1, I have Pegula coming out on top. So my quarterfinal is Swiatek versus Pegula, and I have Pegula coming out on top, even though they played, and I think the head-to-head is Swiatek 5-3, but I don't know. I think Swiatek is just kind of tired, and as she said in her press conferences, just she needs to rest, and I don't think she's been giving sort of enough rest. I think Pegula really have a chance of winning, coming off of her like long run at Cincinnati where she made it to the finals. Sorry, I do want to make a correction. I think at the start I said that she was the Cincinnati winner. Sorry, I was wrong. Sabalenka actually won the Cincinnati match. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen, but I think Pegula really have a chance of beating Swiatek. So, we have Pegula being the first quarter winner. And then for the second quarter, I have Kalinskaya versus Paolini, and I have Paolini coming out on top again. I think this is sort of a bold prediction because Paolini obviously did really well in Wimbledon and French Open, and I'm not sure of her continuing her top performance, but I think with her versus Kalinskaya, I really think she has a chance of just shining through. So I have Paolini versus Pegula, and I think Pegula is going to be able to beat Paolini and make it to the final. So now we'll talk about the second half, starting with quarter 3. So quarter 3, we have the number 8 seed Barbara Krejcikova and the number 3 seed Coco Gauff. So this quarter, I think, are also a quarter with a lot of players that you guys should look forward to seeing, such as Paula Badosa. She's been performing actually really well. For example, in Cincinnati, I think she made it to the semifinals where she lost to Pegula, but she's been just performing really well. She made it to the finals of City Open. She also made it to the round of 16th at Wimbledon, so I think she's just been performing really well. And I mean, I'm really interested to see how she's going to do. I have her beating Krejcikova in round 3 because I just think she has a chance of doing that, even though Krejcikova is the Wimbledon champion. I feel like hard court suit Badosa better. I also have players such as Emma Navarro and Marta Kotiuk, which are players that are performing really well this season, maybe having their best seasons yet, and I really want to see how they're going to perform. And I have round 4 of Kotiuk versus Coco Gauff, and I think Gauff will come out on top. And for my quarterfinal for quarter 3, I have Badosa versus Coco Gauff, and I think Gauff will come out on top, maybe in 3 sets, not 2 obviously, because I think Badosa have a chance maybe of challenging Gauff. I mean, she's been performing really well, and Coco, on the other hand, I feel like she hasn't been getting the result she expected. She maybe expected to win a major title at one of the Grand Slams, but she haven't. And in Cincinnati, she lost in the round of 32, and in Canada, she lost in a round of 16 against Schneider. So I really think Badosa have a chance of beating Gauff, but in the end, I feel like Gauff is the defending champion, and last year in the finals, I really didn't expect her to come back. So I still have Gauff coming out on top for quarter 3. And then for the last quarter, quarter 4, we have the number 7 seed Zheng Qingwen and the number 2 seed Aryna Sabalenka leading. And there's also a lot of, players that you guys should look forward to seeing. So some names I have highlighted are Peyton Stearns and Lulu Sun. So I guess I want to talk about Peyton Stearns first. So I would say Peyton Stearns is someone who kind of just is able to go really deep and just beat players who unexpectedly beat players. For example, let's say that she for example beat Azarenka. She also beat Madison Keys in Canada. So there's just a lot of unexpected wins for her, I guess. And last year she made it really far into the US Open. So she made it to the round of 16th where she lost to Vondrousova. So I think she is capable of making it really far in the US Open. So I have her making it to round 4 where she lost against Yastremska. And in my opinion, I don't think Zheng Qingwen is going to go that far because with the Olympics comes a lot of pressure, and I think people expect her to go really far, maybe go to the semifinals, to the finals, which I think is kind of hard for her because normally I don't think she performs that well in Grand Slams. I think the Olympics was one time where she did, and I don't think she is going to stay consistent. On the bright side, she did make it to the quarterfinal and she lost to Sabalenka, which was the runner-up. So she has the capability of making deep runs. It's just, I feel like when she is matched up against someone like Yastremska, who is capable of beating top players, I think it's going to be just not a good look. I feel like Yastremska, for example, I have her beating Jung Qinwen. So yeah, and I also want to talk about Sabalenka. So I think Sabalenka is going to come out on top for this quarter. I think with Sabalenka versus Yastremska, they played in Italy in May, and Sabalenka actually won with a score of 6-4, 6-2. Not that much, like, I feel like struggle there. I think Sabalenka is going to be able to come through with this quarterfinal matchup pretty easily. And regardless, if it is Jung Qinwen who advances to the quarterfinal, I still think Sabalenka is going to be able to come through rather easily. And with Sabalenka versus Gauff for the second half semifinal, it is a rematch of US Open's final last year. So it's going to be insane. It's going to be really great. However, I think Sabalenka is going to come out on top, which is different from last year's result. But I just think Sabalenka has been performing really well. She won Cincinnati, and Gauff just hasn't. So I think Sabalenka is going to maybe win in 3 sets. I don't think there's going to be any like straight 2 sets ones. I think Sabalenka will win in 3 sets. So the finals, in my eyes, will be between Pegula versus Sabalenka, and I think Sabalenka will win in 3. I think Pegula making it to the finals is already a great run for her. However, I just don't think she has the ability to maybe close it out, especially if you're playing like 6 matches already to win the 7th one on Arthur Ashe, the biggest stadium in the entire world. I feel like Sabalenka just have more experience, to be completely honest. So I think Sabalenka is going to win the women's bracket in 3 sets against Jessica Pegula. Okay, now we'll talk about the men's side. Sorry, this episode is a long one because there's just so much to talk about. My draw analysis ones are always so long because there's just so much to talk about, as I said before, and especially when it's a Grand Slam. I feel like I just have to cover everything, but as I said before, I'm not covering everything, so please go subscribe to my Substack if you want the full deal. Okay, so we'll move on to the quarter 1 of the men's side. We have the number 1 seed, Jannik Sinner, and the number 5th seed, Daniil Medvedev, leading the quarter. So some players that I think you guys should look out for is Tommy Paul, Felix Auger-Aliassime, and Zizo Bergs. So I want to talk about some matches that I think you guys should look out for in round 1. So we have Elliot Spitzeri versus Alex Michelsen. So I saw the Elliot Spitzeri versus the Juan Fonseca match in person, and it was incredible. I felt like the whole crowd was cheering for Juan Fonseca, but Spitzeri was just playing really well. He's been playing really stable, and I just loved how he played. So I think him versus Michelsen, which is also a player from the US, is going to be sort of a really interesting matchup, and I think it will be incredible. So please look out for that match. And I think it wouldn't be played on, like, for example, Arthur Ashe. So if you guys live in New York and want to go in, I think it would just be a match played in like the court. Like, you can go in with like a ground pass and you guys can see that match. So if you guys are planning to visit, please feel free to tune into that match. I also have an upset between Stefanos Tsitsipas and Thanasi Kokkinakis. So it's kind of the same thing with Coco Gauff in a way that Tsitsipas also hasn't been performing that well. Before he was ranked like number 7 or 6 in the world, and now he's only ranked number 11th. Still not really like horrible, obviously, but he's not ranked as high as he was before, and he just hasn't been performing really well at the end of this year. So I think Kokkinakis really have a chance of shining through because he's actually been performing really well. He made it to the round of 32 in Canada, the round of 16th at the City Open, and in Wimbledon, even though he only made it to the second round, but grass really isn't a strong suit for him. So, every time Kokkinakis play, I think it's always an entertaining match. Like, his match against Andy Murray was just incredible. Like, all the matches he play is incredible. So I think this is going to be an upset, and I think you guys should look out for this match. And now I want to talk about the quarterfinal matchup. So I have Sinner coming out on top. I have Sinner coming all the way from beating his first round opponent, McDonald, to beating Mickelson, and then Nicholas Jarry, and then Tommy Paul. And I think on the other side, I actually have Auger-Aliassime coming out on top instead of Medvedev. I don't know. I think even though Medvedev has won the US Open, I feel like this year we hasn't heard as much from him because he just hasn't been performing really well. He lost in the round of 32 against Lehechka in Cincinnati, and he's losing in the round of 32 the first round in Canada against Alessandro Davidovich Fokina. So just nothing is really going really well for him, I would say. So I think Felix have a chance of beating Medvedev because I think Felix has been doing really well. I think this is one of his best years. So for example, in Cincinnati, he made it to the round of 16th. So I think he's really capable of making really far. So however, between Auger-Aliassime and Sinner in a quarterfinal, I think Sinner will come out on top. Now I want to talk about quarter two. So for quarter two, we have Carlos Alcaraz, the number 3 seed, and Hubert Hurkacz, number 7 seed, leading. So to be honest, this quarter, in my opinion, is kind of boring because there just isn't that much action going on. Obviously, there's players such as Alex de Minaur, Roman Safiullin, Jordan Thompson, Jack Draper, etc. However, I just don't think there's a lot of players that are capable of making it really far. So I just have Hurkacz and Alcaraz going to the quarterfinals and Alcaraz coming out on top because Alcaraz just have a better head-to-head record against Hurkacz, but there are some matches that I think you guys should look out for, such as the match between Jack Draper and Zhang Zhizhen. Both of these players has been performing really well. Draper has been beating, for example, Carlos Alcaraz. So I think it's going to be really interesting. I think Draper will come out on top, maybe best. I think he will win in 5 sets. And also the match between Borna Coric and Adrian Manarino is going to be an, I think, entertaining match just because of the way Manarino plays. So for the semifinals of the first half, I have Jannik Sinner versus Carlos Alcaraz. So I mean, this half I would say is kind of just not boring, but there isn't that much going on because I think Sinner and Alcaraz are going to dominate. However, I would say the semifinal between Sinner and Alcaraz is going to be incredible. They've already played against each other so many times. However, I think playing again at US Open is just going to be insane. And I think Sinner is going to take this one. I think Sinner is going to come out on top, and I just feel like he's in really good shape. And Carlos, so is Carlos, but I think Sinner is just more ready. Like, he won Cincinnati, beating Tiafoe in 2 straight sets, whereas Carlos Alcaraz lost in the first round, round of 32 against Gael Monfils, which is, as he said in his own words, is one of the worst matches he ever played. Like, it was just really bad. So I think Sinner is going to come out on top, even though I know performances sometimes doesn't carry into the other tournaments. However, Cincinnati and US Open is sort of really close together. So Cincinnati is supposed to help you prepare for the US Open. So I feel like your performance at Cincinnati will kind of tell you maybe how far or how much you need to train to prepare for the US Open. So I think Sinner is going to perform better. So I have him as the winner of the top half. And for the bottom half, for the quarter 3, we have Casper Ruud, the number 8th seed, and Alexander Zverev, the number 4th seed, leading. This quarter I would say is interesting because 2 of my favorite players on the ATP side is actually in this quarter. So I love Casper Ruud and Lorenzo Musetti. Musetti has been performing really well, getting a bronze medal at the Olympics, making it to the semifinals of Wimbledon. So I think he's really performing incredibly well, and I have him going quite far, even though I still have him losing against Zverev in the 4th round. However, I feel like US Open has been the kindest to Musetti. He always loses in the first or second rounds. However, I feel like this time might be different. And Casper Ruud, sort of similar story. Last year he really didn't do that well, but last year was just not a good year for him. This year is much better. He's getting so much more wins. So I have him playing to the round 4 and losing against Taylor Fritz. I don't know. I feel like Taylor Fritz always plays incredible at the US Open, and I think this might be a great chance of him shining through in, I guess, a quarter where one of the top seed is Casper Ruud. Not that it's like bad, but I think Taylor Fritz really can use that opportunity to shine through. So last year he made it to the quarterfinals of US Open. So I mean, he's comfortable on that US Open surface. So I think he is capable of going really far. And then for the quarterfinals, I have Fritz versus Zverev. And I think Fritz is going to come out on top just because, as I said before, I think he is just, I guess, more suited to the US Open, and especially with everyone in the crowd cheering for him. So I think Taylor Fritz is going to come out on top in the quarter 3. Okay, so now we'll talk about the fourth quarter. So we have the number 6 seed, Andrei Rublev, and the number 2 seed, Novak Djokovic, leading. So this is also a really interesting quarter 4, I would say, because of how many good matches there are in round 1. So I really like the match between Andrei Rublev and Seboth Wild, because Rublev hasn't been performing really well, even though he's sort of finding his foot back, like beating Sinner, for example. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he holds up in a Grand Slam match, especially when it's best of 5. Also, matches such as Jirila Hechka versus Martin Fucsovic is also going to be incredible, and other matches such as Dominic Thiem versus Ben Shelton. I mean, Ben Shelton always performs really well at the US Open, and Dominic Thiem is going to be his last major Grand Slam, which is really sad. But I mean, I think Ben Shelton will win in like maybe 4 or win in 3, but I think it's just such a memorable moment to see Dominic Thiem retire, which is really sad. And another match which I haven't seen that many people talk about online is between Alexander Shevchenko, and Dominik Koepfer. So Koepfer has been here for a long time, but Shevchenko is just on the rise. However, I think it's going to be really interesting to see these people clash. I think both of the people's playing style is going to be incredible, and especially, as I said, similar to the match I mentioned earlier, it's going to be played just like on the grounds, not in any of the stadiums. So if you guys want to check out the match, if you're coming to the US Open, you don't have to buy the expensive stadium tickets, and I think this will be an incredible match. I think it will be a best of 5 match, and I think that Koepfer will come out on top, but like really everything can happen. And I feel like Tiafoe, even though I didn't highlight him, I think I have Koepfer actually beating him in the second round, which I don't know what I was thinking, but I think it's because even though Tiafoe made it to the finals of Cincinnati, his whole year just hasn't been that amazing, and especially with a lot of pressure on him, I think he's going to crash. So I think Koepfer will win. However, if Tiafoe wins, let's say Tiafoe wins and he plays against Ben Shelton, that's going to be an incredible match, and I think Shelton will still come out on top regardless. But let's just continue talking about quarter 4. So we have a round 4 match, which I really want to talk about, which is between Ben Shelton and Novak Djokovic. So I think this will be really interesting because both of these players, I mean, they have beef, like, to be completely honest. It was the drama that happened. So, I mean, it's going to be a rematch, but I think with Novak's personality, anger just makes him play better, and I think Djokovic is going to come out on top. And I have Dimitrov going really far, even though I feel like he really just dwindled off this part of the season. Like, in the start he won a title. However, for example, in Cincinnati, he lost in the round of 32. In Canada, he lost in round of 16th. So he really hasn't been performing that well. But I think Dimitrov have the capability of beating someone like Lehechka, because I think Rublev is going to lose to Lehechka in the third round. And then with Dimitrov beating people such as Fokina and Baez, I think he has a capability of beating Lehechka. And with Dimitrov versus Djokovic, obviously Djokovic is going to come out on top. But I have Djokovic versus Taylor Fritz. And okay, so Djokovic is going to be the winner of quarter 4. However, with the match between Taylor Fritz and Djokovic, I mean, they've played against each other 9 times and Djokovic won all of them. So, I mean, I think Djokovic will win. The only reason why I could think of on the top of my head why Djokovic wouldn't win is maybe just him, like his knee giving out or something like that. He's injured or something like that. I don't think he's going to lose to Fritz, especially when it's a semi-final match on Arthur Ashe Stadium. But for the finals, I have Djokovic versus Sinner, and I think Sinner will win. I mean, Djokovic in Wimbledon was completely destroyed by Alcaraz in 3 straight sets. However, I do want to say I don't think it's going to be 3 straight sets. I think Djokovic will obviously try his best, but however, I feel like Sinner might win in 5 or 4. I think I'm leaning towards 4 because I just think at the end Sinner has more energy and he's younger, so he's more ready to clinch that title. However, I know for a fact that Djokovic wouldn't make it easy for him. And if Sinner does win the whole US Open title, then it will be Sinner. Then the Grand Slam situation will be Alcaraz winning Wimbledon and French Open and Sinner winning Australian Open and US Open. So the 2 hard courts open are won by Sinner, and the clay court and the grass court is won by Alcaraz. So, I mean, I think these 2 players have just been dominating this year. Even like top players like Novak Djokovic really is sort of on the decline, and you really don't see him shine through as much, except for the Olympics where he just completely not destroyed Alcaraz, because it was an entertaining match, but still, like, I feel like it's just Alcaraz and Sinner taking the center stage now, which is an interesting part of men's tennis for sure, because we've seen like Rafael Nadal, Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, Andy Murray took the stage for such a long time. So to see new players coming out is actually quite interesting. And with Rafa probably retiring this year and Andy Murray retired and Novak, I don't know if he has any like plans on stopping, but I don't think he's going to make it to the 2028 LA Olympics. So I mean, maybe in 4 years. So it's really interesting to see players such as Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz rise up. But I guess that's all for today's episode. I didn't talk about the top 3 contenders because you guys have to subscribe to my newsletter to see who I predicted. But there's also some stuff I didn't talk about, such as some first round matchups. But as I said, this episode is already really long. It's hitting the 40 minutes mark. So I'm going to stop right here. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys haven't subscribed to my social medias, you should. It's Instagram and Twitter using @TennisTraverse. That is @TennisTraverse. And I guess I will be posting a lot more since I will be active and following the US Open on Twitter. So if you guys are interested in that, please give me a follow. And if you're listening on YouTube, comment, like, and subscribe. If you're listening on other streaming platforms, please rate my show. And next week's episode is going to be about just, I guess, the first week of the US Open, the last major, and what I think about it, and just some upsets, some incredible matches. But this is all for this week. I really hope you guys enjoyed. I had a blast filming it. I really enjoy every single time these draw analysis because it's one of the episodes I spent the most time on, but it's always the most rewarding to film just because I felt like I feel like I really know the draw now, and I love to share my knowledge with you guys. So if you guys want to see the full PDF, again, feel free to subscribe to my Substack. And yeah, I guess that's all, and I'll see you guys in the middle of the US Open next week. Bye!